Australia's World Economic Forum secret agent. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of people. Hi, John. We're back in the studio and a bit sooner than we expected, but a big important issue.
Martin, I've just literally driven down from Sydney, so I've sat down this morning with a coalition parliamentarian. I'll just leave it at that. But some very extraordinary things that were said in private, which I will go on the record and reveal. But this all goes around this absolute scandal that we've just seen with the former Prime Minister being a secret minister of now what I just heard today was five portfolios. Yeah. So he was the Prime Minister, he was the Treasurer, he was the Finance Minister, the Health Minister, the Minister for Home Affairs, the Minister for Resources, the Minister for Industry, all in secret. It is by far the biggest political scandal of my lifetime, and I just can't understand how this could have happened, and I'm not sure whether our viewers actually understand the significance, both the constitutional and the legal significance of this. But 20 years ago, I joined the Liberal Party when I was in my early 20s, and I saw systemic corruption in terms of tactics which were seen as political fair play. And you have Morrison, who grew up in that environment, who goes into Parliament and just thinks that Machiavellian tactics, which is acceptable in party politics, can be done at the highest levels of Parliament and the Constitution. It is just disgusting.
Yeah, and it tells us an awful lot about how power works within the parliamentary system or outside it. But it almost feels like a sort of dictatorship, right? Effectively, there's stuff going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about. Nobody knows who's making what decisions. And all points go back up to Morrison, who basically was, calling the shots?
Of course. But the other thing is that, which is so significant, is the Governor-General. I mean, so I actually said in this meeting with this coalition parliamentarian, the Governor-General must resign because he's disgraced his office. Because, I mean, he accepted. Here's the thing, the Governor-General has sworn in certain ministers. Those ministers are responsible to Parliament for their conduct. And then he goes behind his own ministers' backs and appoints Morrison as a second minister without telling the first minister. And not only that, he didn't get any legal advice from the Solicitor General. He didn't go to the Chief Justice of the High Court. He didn't tell the Palace in London. The Governor-General just said, well, I take the advice of the Prime Minister. This is what the Prime Minister wanted. In 1933, Hitler wanted full power, and he got it. And then look at what happened in Germany then. So I mean, this type of collapse of cabinet government is what happened in Germany. It happened in terms of other countries. I mean, it is reminiscent of Stalin or Mao, and it is. I cannot believe that Australia has descended into this sort of chaos.
And John, it's worth underscoring, isn't it? Morrison's come out this morning and said, well, it was all about COVID, right? And in those situations, it was absolute chaos. And what we were trying to do is to ensure that government continued even if the people got sick, right? But you got to say, well, hang on, did all of those movements of ministerial power happen in that first COVID period?
No, look, absolutely right. Some of these appointments happened in 2020. Some of these appointments happened in 2021. But again, if a minister did get sick, there are legal procedures that Morrison could have implemented with the Governor-General to have interim ministerial appointments to cover in terms of those sick ministers. So again, COVID has nothing to do with this. And one of the key points, Martin, that I think our audience needs to understand is Australia has a dual constitutional system. So we've taken apart from England and we've taken apart from America. So what we drew from America was the written constitution, and so everyone knows what that is. But the other part of our constitutional system is what's unwritten. And obviously the UK doesn't have a written constitution. They have conventions. So there is a way of how Parliament is supposed to behave I mean, those things have been passed down through centuries. Well, for example, the office of Prime Minister is technically not in the Constitution, but we know what the Prime Minister does and who that person is because we've drawn those, we've taken those rules from England and implemented this. So when ministers of the Crown are accountable to Parliament, I mean, again, the Parliament needs to know who is the minister, and this goes back 400 or 500 years in terms of the history of England. And again, so if the Governor General says, well, there's nothing's written down to say that I can't or can do this or this or this. No, the Governor General, who's a military general, perhaps not as smart as Napoleon, has no idea about the office in which he holds and what is actually involved in understanding the conventions that we inherited from the UK.
And I think that's very important to understand. The conventions may not be written down, but they are a very strong backbone of the way that things are done.
Exactly.
Yep.
And when those conventions are not followed, what happens? You have chaos. You have a collapse of in terms of our parliamentary system. And so now the other thing I just wanted to bring to our audience's attention. So as I was in Sydney today, I went and bought the book in question. So I'll just hold that on the screen. So this is Plagued by Simon Benson and Jeff Chalmers, where they go through what Morrison, what he actually did as Prime Minister and how all of this sort of came about. So as I was coming down on the train, I was reading some of the key sections, and can I say that there are some startling revelations as to why did we go into lockdown and who was actually driving that whole policy. And we'll actually perhaps come back in terms of that and in terms of a future show. But just on these issues of the constitutionality. So we did have Professor Ann Toomey go on national ABC TV yesterday, and she said a couple of extraordinary things. So one of the things that she said was that if Morrison was appointed as the minister by the Governor General, it has to actually be formally recorded in the Government Gazette. And so she went through the Government Gazette yesterday morning and she couldn't find a formal record. So again, we have this supposed swearing in of Morrison as a second minister behind the backs of the actual real minister, and it was never actually recorded. So I'm thinking, well, what is the Governor General actually doing in these secret swearing-ins? Now, the other thing she said was that there is a piece of legislation called the Acts Interpretation Act, and so there is a particular provision. So certain ministers have certain legal powers under certain Commonwealth laws, and so if the main minister gives their permission or their acceptance in a written instrument that another minister takes their power, that they're able to do that. But in this case, this was in secret behind the minister's back, and there's no legality because, for example, if Morrison wanted to become the treasurer, Frydenberg would have had to sign a document saying that my powers under this particular law is now transferred to the Prime Minister, and Frydenberg or Cormann or Hunt or Minister Pitt, none of them actually did any of this. So this is completely illegal. And to be honest, Albanese is now waiting for a report from the Solicitor General on Monday. I don't understand why he hasn't actually called for the Governor General to resign immediately. It's just unbelievable.
Well, Turnbull was on 7:30 last night, and he was expressing his absolute horror and said it's one of the worst things he's ever seen. I mean, everybody's saying this is nuts. It should never have happened.
Absolutely. So the question then becomes Martin, why would Morrison want to have secret power? Was he implementing a secret agenda? Is that agenda domestic, or is it foreign? Who's actually influencing the Prime Minister? And can I say, in this meeting I had this morning with this coalition parliamentarian, a couple of startling things were said to me. One was they knew about our efforts on the cash ban, and so I asked this parliamentarian, well, it took us 16 months to beat your government. Where did this idea come from? And this parliamentarian says, I don't know. This is the most startling thing. This parliamentarian tells me this morning they went to a senior cabinet minister and said, why are we proposing to put people in jail over the use of cash? And the senior cabinet minister says, I don't know where this came from. And it's just unbelievable. I mean, just so our audience understands, so if there is a proposed law that the government is interested in, it first goes to cabinet for approval. It then goes to the joint party room in terms of the coalition Liberal National, and then once it's all accepted, then it's introduced into Parliament. So for a senior cabinet minister to say, I don't know why we're proposing to put people in jail. What happens in these cabinet meetings? Because the cash ban should have been discussed, should have been debated, and people should have realised why we're doing this. It is completely nuts. Now, the other thing that was discussed this morning is that this parliamentarian has had some serious engagement with the World Economic Forum over the last couple of years in various things that this parliamentarian has done, and this parliamentarian is getting all sorts of emails from members of the public saying that Parliament is engaged in some sort of conspiracy with the World Economic Forum and Charles Schwab. And this parliamentarian, again, I went to see this parliamentarian about something completely different, but he wanted to talk about the World Economic Forum. He says he just finds these emails bizarre. He goes, why are people so worried about the World Economic Forum? It's just a forum of where international people come together and have a chat. And I said to this parliamentarian, the problem is that I have no problem. I think the public has no problem if you wish to have a international dialogue. But the problem is you're implementing the ideas of the World Economic Forum.
Yep.
So whether it's about in terms of digital ID, whether it's about the cash ban, whether it's about medical procedures, whether it's about certain things to do with energy, etc. I mean, because I said to this parliamentarian, where are these ideas coming from? So these ideas that the Morrison government was pushing, which were highly controversial, it's coming from somewhere. So, and a lot of them are coming not from within Australia. So it's either Morrison, it's either the bureaucrats, or it's coming from a foreign source. Now, I say that Morrison was obviously highly engaged with the World Economic Forum. Anyone can go on YouTube and have a look. He actually provided a 90-minute address to the World Economic Forum on YouTube. So I was listening to some of it today, and so he's highly engaged in a forum. Who knows what secret conversations he may or may not have had with international collaborators. Who knows whether he's had some sort of sweetheart deal lined up for him once he leaves politics, because that's the type of person he is. And now we know that he assumed power like Hitler did because of what? Because maybe he wanted to guide public policy in a particular way, and he's been told by some international entity, we want Australia to head in this direction, and he may have thought, well, I can't get it through cabinet, so I'm just going to take all of cabinet's power and sort of do what I want. I mean. So again, so I'm getting these conversations from parliamentarians. Why is everyone so nervous about the World Economic Forum? Because you're implementing their ideas, and so at some point, these parliamentarians. Now, again, I said to this parliamentarian, I said, if you want to get into the good graces of the Australian people, how about you actually introduce a law to make it legally required that physical cash must be offered, must be distributed among the Australian people, and that the RBA or the banks or whoever have no legal power to withdraw physical cash. I said, if you do that, you will give people confidence that they can engage in commerce without government detection. So now, fun enough, this parliamentarian took some notes when I said that, but I said, if you do something like that, well then that's a very different type of a policy than what the Morrison government was pushing previously, and people would feel more comfortable about where the country is going. So again, I mean, I find it a little bit bizarre that you got parliamentarians questioning me. Why is everyone so nervous? Well, look at your own conduct. Look in the mirror. Maybe you realise that there's something really wrong with some of the ideas that in terms of the pushing. And fun enough, we actually did talk about central bank digital currencies in terms of this conversation, and I said to them, you do realise that the RBA just announced a retail central bank digital currency pilot last week, And they said, no, I had no idea. So go look at the RBA website, and you realise that slowly but surely Australia's headed in a particular direction which most Australians are not comfortable with. So how about you roll up your sleeves and try to wind some of this stuff back?
And John, it's worth just going back to the APRA Act and the deposit bail-in, right? Because, of course, that is something that was cascaded down through the G20, and the international entities that we've been talking about have been basically saying to Australian politicians, it needs to be in, it needs to be in, it needs to be in.
Yes.
And it's another example when the local politicians have no idea what's going on.
Exactly. So we have foreign entities, whether it's the World Economic Forum, the BIS, the IMF, the United Nations, foreign central banks, whoever, are basically cooking up a whole host of controversial ideas, and somehow through some sort of either direct dialogue or through some sort of committee is saying to politicians, how about you try this? And they don't think it through, and they just do it.
Yep.
And then when people like you react and going, what the hell's going on? They're going, well, why is everyone so nervous? It's just unbelievable. Now, I just wanted to bring to our attention, to the attention of the audience, about the institution of the Prime Minister, because again, we've gotten to the stage, Martin, where the Prime Minister, and I'm not just talking about Morrison, but I'm probably talking, even if you go back to say Howard or Keating or Hawke, there's a view that the Prime Minister has huge power that is above and beyond the cabinet colleagues. So and now this whole concept has gotten out of hand to the extent that the Prime Minister Morrison has believes that he can do whatever he wants. So but the institution of cabinet is, if we go back through English history, it's a group of royal advisors to advise the monarch, king or queen, about the affairs of state. Now, in the royal court, these advisors were supposed to be equal. So in the British tradition, and I've heard this say about, for example, when Tony Blair was Prime Minister of the UK, he had to be reminded, you are not dictator, yep. You are the first among equals. Now, so what is this expression, the first among equals? Because historically in the royal court, everyone was supposed to be of equal weight advising the monarch, and there was no one particular leader. So when a few centuries ago, when one person sort of stood up and it was appearing to be the leader in the royal court, the term Prime Minister was actually an insult. It wasn't actually a positive term. So let's actually put slide 3 on the screen. So this actually comes from an official website of the UK government. So there's a quote, the title Prime Minister was originally a term of abuse rather than a description of an official role. It implied that an individual subject had risen improperly above others within the royal circle and had echoed of a political institution imported from France, England's great enemy. So the Prime Minister, now obviously the role of the Prime Minister has evolved since, say, the 15th or 16th centuries. But Prime Ministers, doesn't matter of which political party that they're from, have to be reminded that they, while they are sort of the head of the government, that they have equal standing. Can I say, I get this extraordinary, I have to tell the story, man, unbelievable. Yesterday I get a text message from a coalition senator, because I'm just listening to this news, I can't believe it. I shoot off a message to a coalition senator that says, what the hell is happening in Parliament? And this person comes back and says, well, I mean, what's done is done, it's history. We need to now move on and focus about in terms of Albanese, and because he goes, at the end of the day, he was the Prime Minister, and I'm thinking to myself, hang on, if the Prime Minister is out of control, the cabinet has the power to get rid of the Prime Minister because it is the first among equals. Yep. So this whole notion, the Prime Minister has the power if the Prime Minister wishes to do X or Y. So yes, can the Prime Minister sack cabinet colleagues? Sure, if the cabinet will allow the cabinet will allow the Prime Minister to be able to sack a minister. But if the Prime Minister is out of control, if we have Hitler at the head of the government, if we have the Mad King, it is the responsibility of the other colleagues to say, you're out of line, you're not abiding by the constitutional system that we have here, we're going to sack you because you're not exercising your power responsibly. And so all of these so-called ministers who just basically, like Michael McCormack, who basically told one of his colleagues, well, what the Prime Minister wants is what the Prime Minister gets. No, that's not how our system happens. And so when I get these sort of messages from coalition senators saying, well, what do you want me to do about it? It happened. No, you should be outraged. You should be calling for an inquiry because we deserve better.
And John, I got the theory. I think that what's happened is that the American presidential system has sort of infiltrated the thinking of a lot of leaders here in Australia. And I rather think that they think the Prime Minister is sort of veering more towards the manifestation of power as the president. And that's part of the problem.
Yes. I mean, so particularly in election campaigns, the media likes to go around and follow the Prime Minister or the leader of the opposition and say, you speak on behalf of your party, what is your position? Rather than they should be actually interviewing like a whole host of ministers and saying, well, you are the government. So the government is of, 15, 20 colleagues, and we're going to ask for your views on behalf of the government. I think the media has a role to play here. But I just want to bring up slide 4, Martin. So going throughout British history, there was an individual who called Robert Walpole, who was one of the first people to really stand out in the 18th century, like in terms of the prime ministership. And so when he was actually pressed about his supposed leadership role, he said the following. He said that this again comes from the UK government, quote, "However, the idea of an official office of prime minister remained taboo. In 1741, when the nature of his government was under attack, Walpole told the Commons, I unequivocally deny that I am sole and prime minister." So again, in the 18th century, when people say you're too big for your boots, I'm not the prime minister. I'm just everyone else like in the royal court. So again, Australians, but also those in the elite institutions, they have forgotten how Australia came about. What are these institutions? How do they evolve? And perhaps we need to teach more English history so we can understand why does Australia run, or why do we run the way we do, and how are things supposed to work? Because it's either people don't know, or we've just had basically, in some regards, potentially a coup d'etat.
And I think, John, I want to make the point about the fact that a vacuum can often lead to it being invaded. And part of the problem, I think, is the vacuous way that the politicians have been behaving and working allows this to happen, because they're actually not only not understanding the heritage, but their behaviour is also completely off key as well. So they put those two things together and we end up with this mess that we've got.
Indeed. One of the things I told a senator in terms of yesterday by text message, I said, you have to now support an inquiry into the coalition, because I said people will not listen to you if they don't trust you. And why should anyone vote Liberal or National in terms of the 2025 federal election? Because you don't know who's going to be the PM. You don't know who's going to be the minister. Are we going to have more secrets? Are we going to have a transparent government that's accountable to Parliament, and Parliament actually knows who's got what legal power? I mean, this is such a crisis of confidence that and again, not just the coalition, but every parliamentarian needs to say this can never happen again. And to be honest, if criminal sanctions need to be put on Morrison, then I think he needs to go to jail, because what he has done is the biggest assault on democracy since 1788.
Yeah, it's horrendous, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I wonder whether they will try and sweep it into the long grass, John, or whether, in fact, the true significance of this will actually force them to actually change their behaviour and change their attitudes. Because actually, maybe this is actually what needs to happen to wake people up and make politicians work for us rather than against us.
Well, the thing is that if there is an attempt in Canberra to sweep this under the carpet, I think the people should say we don't accept it. We demand. Things heads have to roll. So now again, there's going to be some sort of report from the Solicitor General on Monday. But again, I mean, if the Governor General is still in his job in the next fortnight, I'm just going to be completely appalled. He is clearly in over his head, and we need people in these positions who actually understand how Parliament is supposed to work, and what is the proper constitutional role of these positions.
Absolutely. Well, this is probably one of the most critical conversations we've had, John, because it really goes to the heart of what government is, how it works, and where power lays.
But the other important thing is that where do policy ideas come from?
Yes.
And if there are some unpopular policy ideas, who is actually pushing those ideas? So again, as we go forward into this Albanese government, one of the key things we need to be discussing at length is if there are some really stupid ideas coming forward, who is telling these politicians? Because again, I get told today, no, I don't know where this cash ban came from. I go to people in the cabinet, they have no idea, and it just somehow comes out of nowhere. I mean, look, it is just unbelievable. And again, just on the cash ban, this law by Morrison and Frydenberg Sukkar was different compared to the Europeans because they wanted to put people in jail. So for people in the cabinet to say, I don't know why we're putting people in jail, it just shows that this was a complete debacle of cabinet government, and hopefully the Albanese government is going to behave a lot better.
Well, we'll certainly hold them to account as best we can, John, in the interest of the people.
We'll hold them to account because maybe the Parliament has forgotten how to do it.
Exactly. John, thanks for this.
Thanks.
Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of people. We'll see you next time.